Hello everyone. So in this video I would like to talk about the qualifiers and the custom qualifiers. In a typical enterprise scale Spring application, it's common to have 100 or 1000 or more defined beans which will be injected into one another, and you surely want to have control on which bean is injected. So for this example I have a very simple application. So I have a movie recommender which take a catalog as an argument, a catalog which just have a name and a getter, and a configuration class. And this configuration we define two beans of type movie catalog, a thriller and a comedy, and a recommender where we inject one of these two. Otherwise, and nothing else. Our main class in another class, our main method in another class, and the starter project, which contains the core Spring API. Okay, so here we have two candidates to be injected here. Let's see what Spring tells if we run our program. So no surprise, Spring complains and comes with a meaningful message. Custom configuration required a single bean, but two were found. And he gives us a hint how to solve this problem. So one way to overcome this is, you probably know that you can give the name of the bean as a parameter name here, and then you have to change the body of your method, and this will work. But you probably don't want to do this. You want to have a control on what is injected or not, and not by giving the parameter name. So let's undo this. So let's try the hint given by Spring. Let's run our program. So we expect to see a thriller as output. Here it is. So we might have hundreds of catalogs defined. Only this one will be picked all the time if we inject it like here, like this. This is where the qualifiers comes into place. Here, with the qualifiers, we can tell Spring which bean we want to inject. So let's say we want to, let's keep our primary here, and let's try to inject the comedy. So the qualifier annotation should be used in the injection point. So here we inject it here. So this is where our qualifier should come. And the qualifier annotation come with a parameter which is the bean name. So here we want to inject the comedy catalog. Let's import and let's run our program. And we have our comedy injected despite the primary annotation on the thriller catalog. So this qualifier annotation can be used in every bean of every type. So what you might want to use sometimes is to define your own qualifier. Let's do it. So to define your own qualifier, so you implement an interface annotation, you give it a qualifier, so now it is a qualifier. It will be used in the runtime, and this is the places where our qualifier can be used. And let's create a parody bean. So for that, let's create a movie catalog of type parody. And we annotate it with parody. Now let's create our bean. And finally, let's use our parody. So let's run our program. And we have our parody catalog injected. So what happens if I have another parody bean here defined? Let's call it catalog 2 and parody 2. So here again we end up with the same problem as before. So we have two candidates eligible for injection here. But we still reduced the number of candidates because before we would have all these 4 beans as candidates, but with this annotation we reduce the amount with only 2, which makes it interesting to use. And to even have more granularity in the injection, we can even define annotations with properties. So let's create another qualifier annotation. Let's call it horror, or like old horror VHS category, and it will have a format and year, for example. And let's create one class of type horror. So it's not the best name for a class, but for our purpose it's fine. So our annotation will complain that we are missing the values, and we should give the format and the year. So all the bins of this type are VHS, and by the way we can even use an enum here, which is more interesting, but let's keep it with a string right now. And this catalog is for the VHS horror movies of year 1970. And let's create our bin. And finally, we use our annotation. It complains, so let's give it the values. Format is VHS, and year is 1970. So a bin of type movie catalog will be injected only if it's annotated with old horror VHS, and every attribute here has these values of type VHS and 1970. Let's run our program. And it works. And let's say we want to inject something very similar only of year 1971. Let's run. And no surprise, Spring doesn't find such a bin and will complain. So this way you can reach a high granularity in the way Spring or the application context picks the bin to be injected. So I hope this video helps, and see you next time.